Many will remember the early hours of June 24th, 2016. The news of Brexit, the UK's definitive decision to quit the European Union, shocked the whole globe. The globe was shaken by this seismic event, and one issue emerged as the most crucial of all. What does the future hold for the UK and Europe in the wake of Brexit? Was Europe going to bear the brunt of this, or would it be the UK struggling to get its trade back on track? Stay with us as we see how Brexit has reshaped trade in Europe. Even though the matter of the UK exiting the European Union had been in the pipeline for a long time, the initial impact was immediate. Small and big businesses alike faced extreme uncertainty. The pound sterling fell, and markets reacted with volatility. Just in the first 24 hours following the Brexit vote, the pound fell about 10% against the dollar. This marked its biggest one-day fall in history. The FTSE 100 initially dropped by 8%, but it rebounded slightly. Yet, the decline in the pound simply meant that the price of imports would significantly increase, and of course, the living cost for UK residents as well. The UK's exit from the single market and customs union also meant an increased administrative burden on companies trading across the new border. From a once smooth-sailing highway, the UK and EU transitioned to one with many checkpoints and toll booths. Now, this analogy helps to understand the new trade barriers, such as customs checks and regulatory environments. Yet, this was just the beginning of a long and complex journey. So, what was the game plan? How did the UK and EU navigate the immediate aftermath of the referendum? It was simple. Both entities now had to negotiate a new trade deal. From January 31, 2020 to December 31, 2020, the UK and EU engaged in negotiations to move forward from Brexit and find a middle road that would be beneficial to both. The aim was simple. They both had to establish new trade agreements that would define future relations. And let us tell you, the negotiations were tough, with both sides trying to protect their interests. But by the end of it, both the UK and EU had reached a trade agreement known as the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, or TCA for short. Did it mean that all the problems were solved? Nope, not at all. The data provided by the International Trade Council indicated a decrease in UK goods exported to the EU by 14.9% in the first quarter of 2021, compared to the same period in 2020. And for imports from the EU, they declined by 20.3%. You see, despite the efforts, many industries, especially those that relied on smooth cross-border operations, faced disruptions. Take, for instance, the automotive sector. Factories in the UK and EU had to adjust to new customs checks, which meant delays in production and delivery. A UK-based car manufacturer would previously ship parts from Germany and assemble them in his own country within days. Post-Brexit, each shipment required customs declarations that resulted in weeks of delays. The implication has been complex. With increased costs, the competitiveness of UK products within European markets has decreased. So, as businesses navigated these new barriers, what strategies did they employ to adapt and thrive? European businesses needed to move fast and quickly to adjust to the new trade environment post-Brexit. Now, this meant that they needed to rethink their supply chains, effectively and innovatively. The companies had to determine their potential to source more locally or to develop local suppliers to maintain competitiveness and quality. Of course, all of this meant more expenses and investment. Many companies, for instance, in the UK, explored options of sourcing from non-EU countries to avoid border checks and tariffs. Wyke Farms, a cheese producer in Somerset, built a consolidation center to reduce delays and handle the increased paperwork more efficiently. By sending fewer but larger shipments, they managed to keep their products competitive in the European market despite the new challenges. This move was part of a broader strategy to collaborate with other producers and offer a portfolio of British products to enhance their appeal in Europe and beyond. Some businesses decided to move parts of their operations to the EU. Hampstead Tea relocated its stock warehouse from London to Northern Europe to avoid the complications of shipping directly from the UK. This move allowed them to continue serving their European customers without the hassle of additional tariffs and shipping delays. In the automotive sector, companies faced increases in operational costs due to new customs processes. An executive from an automotive manufacturer mentioned that managing these new processes would cost their company over £7 million annually. To cope, businesses invested in digital tools and advanced analytics to optimize their supply chains and maintain efficiency. The fishing industry, however, struggled the most. New regulations meant that shellfish exports to Europe were no longer possible, which caused significant financial losses. The UK government provided funds for purification centres to meet EU rules, but the extra costs and bureaucratic hurdles remained a heavy burden. Finally, the hardest problems were encountered by small and medium-sized businesses. Many SMEs found it difficult to handle the extra paperwork and expenses since they lacked the resources of larger firms. Due to trade restrictions resulting from Brexit, more than 30% of SMEs experienced a notable reduction in profitability. In order to prepare for any disruptions, firms also stockpiled products throughout the post-Brexit period. Companies that manufacture pharmaceuticals and medical technology, for example, started hoarding essential goods to ensure delivery, even in the event of border delays. But adaptation wasn't limited to businesses alone. How did Brexit reshape the broader economic landscape of Europe? There's no denying the fact that Brexit's impact on Europe has been far-reaching and complex. However, certain regions and sectors have been hit much harder than others. Many financial services in the UK faced new barriers to operating in the EU and relocated operations to cities like Frankfurt, Paris, and Amsterdam to maintain access to the European market. Research by EY shows that UK financial firms transferred assets worth over $1 trillion to the EU as part of their post-Brexit strategy. Of course, this also meant that the economic benefits of Brexit were not uniform across the UK. Northern Ireland, due to the Northern Ireland Protocol, maintained access to both the UK and EU markets. However, they faced a complex regulatory environment. Meanwhile, regions like the West Midlands, which relied heavily on manufacturing, saw local GDP fall by 5.29%. There was another interesting trend that was observed post-Brexit. UK exports to the EU versus the rest of the world have moved in lockstep until Brexit. However, it's been found that UK goods exports to the EU have not grown as fast as those of EU member states with each other since Brexit. The Centre for European Reform calculated that UK exports to the EU would be about 27% higher today if they had grown at the same rate as intra-EU trade. Similarly, Brexit has had a clear impact on sectors like chemicals and automotive goods. For instance, UK exports of chemicals to the EU have dropped 12%, while EU intra-member exports in the same segment have grown by 32%. UK exports to the EU in the food, live animals, beverages, and tobacco sectors are running 15% ahead, but intra-member exports elsewhere in the EU have surged 40%. This disparity demonstrates how Brexit has hampered UK exporters relative to their EU rivals. Manufacturers of materials have not seen a change in their export performance to the EU, while EU intra-member exports are up by a third. Transport equipment exports from the UK to the EU also showed no significant change, whereas EU intra-member exports in this sector have grown. All of this indicates that Brexit has likely dampened the UK's export potential. However, when it comes to services, the picture is mixed. UK services exports in areas like telecommunications, computer information services, and other business services have grown at a rate similar to the average of advanced economies. However, in sectors like financial and transport services, the growth of UK exports has been slower than the average. Here, you can note that UK insurance and pension services exports have skyrocketed. This shows an outlier trend within the general underperformance. Overall, there's a 10% shortfall in services exports, however, in sectors like financial and transport services, leading to a predicted impact on GDP. These figures align with models predicting a 2 to 3% hit on GDP due to trade disruptions from Brexit. Regardless, beyond industries, how did Brexit affect everyday people, consumers and workers? Now, before we dive into consumer behavior post-Brexit, if you've enjoyed this video up till now, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more. People are the epitome of adaptability. If one option runs out, consumers find another. The same trend was seen post-Brexit as well. The increased cost of imported goods led to a rise in demand for locally produced items. This fostered a resurgence in some domestic industries in the UK and Europe. However, this shift also meant that some products became less available or more expensive, of course, which altered purchasing habits. Similarly, we can't ignore the effects of Brexit on the workforce within these two entities. When the UK finally decided to exit the European Union, it also ended free movement from the EU. The result? New barriers in hiring foreign workers. Imagine the frustration of a small tech startup eager to hire top talent from across Europe. Now they face a significant amount of fees just to sponsor foreign workers. Companies must pay to be licensed to sponsor workers, and the costs don't stop there. Workers themselves are burdened with extra expenses, like the skilled worker visa fee, which ranges from £625 to £1,423. Add in the annual healthcare surcharge of £624, and it's clear why the UK is becoming less attractive to migrants. Statistics also paint a harrowing picture. The UK tech sector has witnessed a sharp drop in job growth. Tech job openings plummeted by 50% in 2022 compared to before Brexit. This number highlights the significant decline and represents actual people struggling to find opportunities. As a result, Brexit has also caused a brain drain, with EU workers who previously headed to the UK now choosing other paths. However, amidst all this, there is a spark of resilience. Some companies are investing in training local talent, hoping to fill the gap left by departing EU workers. A committee from the UK Parliament's House of Lords found that ending freedom of movement impacted vacancies, which recently hit record-high levels. They noted that early retirement, EU workers leaving, and attempts to replace them with non-EU workers have contributed to mismatches in the labor force, accentuating shortages in certain sectors. The government has tried to address this by listing some tech and science jobs as shortage occupations, reducing requirements and fees for these roles. But is this a sustainable way forward? If not, then what is? Both the UK and the EU continue to navigate their new relationship, seeking to balance cooperation with independence. The rise of digital trade and e-commerce presents new growth opportunities, minimizing some physical barriers introduced by Brexit. According to the European Centre for International Political Economy, digital trade between the UK and EU increased by 25% last year, indicating a significant shift towards online commerce. The ongoing negotiations and adjustments will shape the future of trade. The UK and EU are working on optimizing their trading relationship, focusing on digital services, green technology, and innovation. Although regulatory fragmentation, trade barriers, and geopolitical conflicts present challenges, there are some reasons for hope in our reconciling 2 further years of affected growth with substantial prosperity. The exact impacts and appearance of post-Brexit Europe remain uncertain, as businesses, governments, and individuals adjust to a new reality. But it's evident that the face of European trade has changed forever. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and watch the following videos for more interesting global insights.